All right, what's up, beautiful people? It's the worst fucking podcast on the internet. As usual, I'm here. Aaron's here. And we're just going to talk about stuff in the bushes. Snakes. But first, sponsor time. VetDNA.com for all of your testing needs. Use code SHITHAPPENS for $5 off the Cryptosporidium panel. If you need to test some poop, Ral has you covered. And all your other testing needs, of course. Have you tested any poop recently?
I have not.
Maybe soon. You'll need to.
I might need to test my own.
Mm-hmm. They do Kitrid and stuff too, so you can actually more cheaply run that than you could if you did it through your a university lab. Mm-hmm.
They might science has
science has gone farther. I used to swab fucking red spotted newts and give it to my professor's wife, who was going to run it USDA and was going to be $100 a sample, and everything caught up at this point. It's $20 or whatever, easy overnight PCR, no Western blot bullshit. Oh, times have changed. Stoneage ball pythons. All of your ball python needs in the Pacific Northwest. He's in the 15 Minutes of Lame contest. Go vote for him if you like his beard. Very nice beard. Thank you. Stoneage ball pythons. Andrew, Powerhouse pythons. He does not have a beard. We're working on that part. But if he did, he's a Pacific Northwest provider of Go for Cocoa, ball pythons, Stemson's pythons, leopard geckos, and all kinds of other stuff, rodents. Thank you, Andrew. Chris, BNS Reptilia. He's our Pituophis patriarch. Lots of Pituophis that you could buy. He's still running his 25% off Christmas sale. He has not updated Morph Market. Morph Market is basically a jumbled mess today. You don't know what that is, Aaron, but chat will know. If you've been to Morph Market, it's like a disaster. But you can still message him and get 25% off until Christmas if you mention Holdback Rack Podcast. Shane Kelley, I've been harassing Shane Kelley, Small Town Xotics, to post his Kelley Co. video. He hasn't done it yet. Maybe after Christmas, who knows? Small Town Exotics, Bravo Zulu Pythons. She is a veteran, woman-owned ball python breeding business, and she's doing little mini flash sales. So check her out on Instagram or Facebook, because some of this her standing inventory, she's doing a flash sale with the price. And Gray Family Snakes, they have their triple het BPI DG Pied clutch on Morph Market now. So check it out. Thank you, Aaron, for sitting through a sponsor spot where you probably didn't understand some of it.
Context clues.
Oh, fuck. All right. Let's go back in time. Let's do a little journey. How do we know each other? Can you tell the audience?
So you and I...
Don't reveal any incriminating details.
I'll try not to. It'll be hard. But, so Jessica and I went to grad school together at Marshall University in West Virginia. Our advisor was Dr. Pauly, herpetology guy in West Virginia. Did a lot of stuff.
Still alive. That's the craziest part.
Still kicking. Yeah. I talk to him every once in a while, and
he's doing great.
Yeah. Well,
I will be dead way before he's dead at the rate we're going.
He's got good genes. Most of I think his dad and his grandpa both lived over 100. So.
It's crazy.
He's done a lot of work with cheap mountain salamander, federally listed species, endemic to West Virginia. And he recently had another salamander named after him, the yellow spotted woodland salamander. And
is that a Desmognathus? I don't even remember.
No, it's a whirly eye sibling species. Yeah, it one of those weird ones that lives down in the Cumberlands that has yellow spots.
All right, sweet.
Yeah. So
we have a couple other poly babies that like listen.
Mhm.
And then like other poly children that people might know in the audience are Dr. Loveman, Dr. Messenger. Did Nate ever get his PhD? Maybe not. And Nate Shepard.
Sure.
So those are all poly children, and there are many more, hundreds, millions. He was
prolific.
Yeah, he was about that like high fecundity model of being a professor.
Worked.
Mm-hmm. Classic people. Andrew's here. He's excited about rattlesnakes.
Oh yeah.
If y'all have any like weird random questions, I think we could casually do that. So we were in grad school together. We don't want to talk about that too much, but what happened after grad school for you?
So for me, I in between the 2 semesters that we were in, or 2 years that we were in grad school together, I randomly messaged a guy at Penn State who was doing who I found was doing telemetry research on rattlers in northern PA, which I'm from I'm from the Pittsburgh area, and so I thought, hey, that would be a cool summer job. And initially, he said that he didn't need anything. Probably thought I was crazy, just randomly emailing someone. And then I was actually doing cheap mountain salamander surveys with Dr. Pauly, and he emailed me and said, hey, can you start like tomorrow, basically, because he need, for whatever reason, some of his technicians didn't work out. He just needed someone like ASAP. And so I did the rest of the summer doing telemetry up there on timber rattlesnakes.
Were they already implanted and they were just recapturing them wherever they were, or were you adding new implants? Where was it? Where was the study at that point? I guess
a little bit of both. They had some implanted the year before, but we were also actively catching them, and I would actually assist on when he was doing the surgeries and stuff too. So it was
did he do them himself?
Yeah, he did it himself.
Okay. What did the iCook committee think about that? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I'm still traumatized by iCook.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a study to see the effects of fracking essentially on rattlesnakes in PA. But so we had like a control site and a treatment site where they were supposed to put all these well pads.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a before, during, and after was supposed to be the the thing.
Did it ever published?
I don't think anything was ever actually published from it, because they ended up being like, oh, we're not going to drill there anymore. So sorry.
Isn't that funny how it can take a lot of human man hours and suffering, and then it's like, I'm assuming it was both good and bad, because there'd be like more chances for thermoregulation, but like more impacts from just being smushed by vehicle traffic. What did you think the results of it were?
That was basically what you exactly just said. That was what they were trying to figure out, because several of our sites were on existing well pads in that area where the gravid females would gestate. So at that latitude in most of Pennsylvania, most of the northern Appalachians and Northeast, gravid female timbers, they don't eat pretty much all summer long. They need to have an open area, some kind of open canopy area to cook the babies. And those are, in some areas of the state, those areas are hard to come by. So they really will flock to any kind of right of way or well pad or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a lot of the existing well pads in the area were sites that we caught them at, and we're monitoring them over a long time. And there were natural sites there as well. And we didn't really have a whole lot of mortality in that study, which was pretty crazy for how many snakes that I think that over the time that I worked at, we implanted maybe 60 snakes or so over 3 years. And most of the snakes that didn't make it, we don't know why. They just basically, they were implanted and they just never came out of the den. And then we had a couple that were predated. It looks like basically I would go out and I would just find a transmitter that was coiled up like it had been through something's intestinal tract. Yeah. We only had one that got hit by a car. We had one that got hit by a car, and that was it.
All right, real quick. Andrew asks, in Pennsylvania, is it canebrake or timber?
It's timbers. Generally, if you're in the coastal plain of the United States, it is canebrakes. Everywhere else, it's timbers.
I agree. Yeah. I don't ever hear canebrake anywhere else, basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they used to be a subspecies, and then they changed it. But honestly, it's what most people still refer to them as canebrakes. The ones in the South, like in Georgia, South Carolina, and in the coastal plain of Florida. They're only in a little bit of Florida. But yeah, I mean, they look different. They behave different. Their venom's different. I'm generally a lumper, but I think that that's definitely one that should be different, I would think.
The world is changing all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Even since grad school, Selensky, I got dropped down from full species status to subspecies. I don't know, Pantherophis.
Yeah.
And you're it's only been 10 years.
I don't even try to keep up with rat snake stuff. It's just I still call it Elafe obsoleta.
All right, good. It's just hard, and then it doesn't make sense. And then from a keeping side, in Pennsylvania, for natives, you can only keep 4 as pets. But now all of a sudden, Everglades, yellows are all the same species as what was native. So technically, you could have kept them before. So it taxonomically messes you up.
Yeah, I know that'll probably be a problem with anyone who has southern copperheads in PA too, because they just changed that.
Yeah. I don't know what to do about it. It sucks.
It's really I understand the science of why they are. Well, I can pretend to understand the science of why they split things up, but at some point it's kind of just hogwash to me. I don't know.
Right, it's like semantics. And stuff. You're just I hand wave a new species, or I lump. And
well, yeah. My biggest problem with it is that what I hate seeing is you see some news article and they're like, new species discovered in, Virginia or what, or Ohio or whatever. And it's people, the general public will look at that and be like, oh man, they went out and found a new species that nobody's ever found before. No one's seen it. And it's no, it's just, it looks exactly the same as this other one. We just did genetics on it. I feel like it, in the eyes of the general public, it has the potential to make biologists look dishonest. And I don't, that always has kind of irked me. But it's also up to the way that the media portrays it. So I don't know. Speaking of a mess.
On this topic, remember how we always had to write impact statements for shit that they're like, oh yeah, we're maintaining biodiversity, blah blah blah. Like you have to make the point of your study like have a purpose to normies.
Yeah.
But don't you think almost that is like a form of lying? You're like, yeah, it probably really doesn't fucking matter, right? It's just because we want to know like what they do for fun.
Yeah.
It's that a form of lying? Be like, I need money, so I'm gonna like convince you there's a use case.
Yeah. It can be hard to commit, but see with actually trying to figure out actually trying to like study like natural history aspects of species like that. It's like we don't know in the future what's going to happen, and getting all the info we can while they're still common is important. That's something that's going on right now. Like we don't know anything about a lot of the chorus frog species that are disappearing in the US. And it's not looking good for a lot of them. So I can understand.
I guess what I'm getting at is like there's like a hysterical edge to all impact statements or whatever that like you have to do it. You're like, okay, fuck global warming, invasive species, all this shit, and it sounds, and eventually it's just like nobody in the public cares. But what they need to care is just we need to know more about everything. Period. Because science moves forward when you know more about everything. Period. So all information should be valued about the natural world pretty much equally, even if it has no potential use case. You can't turn it into a medicine. Nobody gives a fuck. It just is all important because nature is important. The whole system's important. We don't know why it will be important in the future. It just is important. I think we do a terrible job of communicating that.
Yeah. Because we know why it needs to be like that, but it's also I think we do a bad job communicating that, but it's also like a lot of people just don't care. Like they're not gonna, like if you're people will think certain things are cute or whatever, but if you're like, we're gonna raise your taxes to find out what the salamander eats, they'll show up with pitchforks and torches, to a certain degree. I think that it can be hard to get people to buy into something that they are not going to see very tangible results from.
How do we trick people into liking things?
Tell them it's about climate change.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. Right, exactly. It is like a conundrum. Like that's why I always like pairing like game species use cases with whatever. You're like, this might affect the fucking grouse, and then everyone's like, oh, the grouse, and you're like, but it's really about rattlesnakes, right? But it's like, if we put in these food plots for a grouse, what happens to the rattlesnakes? Because then like everyone's like, oh yeah, fucking, we need to know how many stems is there in this fucking plot. Then it makes more sense to people. But it's something I've struggled with for like 10 years. Is like, A, nobody cares about anything ever unless it's like materially affecting them. And then B, obviously all these scientists are starving. All of those GS4s that go from position to position and suffer, techs, field people, none of them have any money. None of them have a job. Not enough tenure positions. They're all suffering. So whatever drama they can drum up to get money, probably good, right? Good. But it creates this like, we're all psycho and we just want money. Basically, we just want like the tiniest bit of money to eat.
Just
we don't even like
crumb. A little crumb.
Chris asked, is there a volunteer program in PA to help with rattlesnakes?
Sort of. So Pennsylvania does right now is currently doing a distribution survey, a volunteer atlas program, and it's called the PA Amphibian and Reptile Survey. And so basically this is a citizen science type of thing where you go out you sign up for the website and you go out and find whatever herps you can. And instead of like the old way of a museum needing a voucher, like an actual, preserved specimen, that's we don't do that anymore. And especially for rare stuff. So you can take a photo voucher and it has to be verified by 3 different people.
Wow. I found the website.
There it is. And I'm actually the Westmoreland County coordinator.
Oh, that's cool.
It's the orange one in the southwest corner there, that one. And I'm on the verification committee too, where and we get all kinds of records. And
how many non-natives, sorry to interrupt, how many non-natives have people sent you pictures of to verify? Like somebody's pet corn snake got out or whatever?
Yeah, that happens quite a bit. There's house geckos and there's Italian wall lizards out in the southeastern part of the state.
There's house geckos up there? It's warm enough in the summer?
Not house gecko. There's no.
Like Mediterranean geckos?
Yeah, Mediterranean.
Hemidactylus turcus or whatever it is. Yeah, we have done here.
Philly. Yeah.
That's crazy. They got up that north. They're tough as shit. Like, I'm impressed.
Yeah,
because it's like 6 months where they can't be out here because it's just too cold. They're only here for like 3 months over the summer.
I'm pretty sure if you click on species on there, up at the top bar, not in Westmore,
So they're living in the city in Philly because it's like warmer.
I think that's
overall.
Yeah, I think
that's
just
fucking crazy.
Really.
Did I just skip the lizard section?
No, it's down further.
I don't know. Sometimes like the weedy species, I actually think they're badass.
Like there's a cool study. Yep. Yeah, there it is.
A bunch of them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's several species that have been.
Wow.
Put it this way: there's enough of them on there that we have them on that.
Right. That's crazy.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't even know there was that many counties for them. I mean. So
the picture counts as a voucher.
Yeah, it's got to be verified by 3 different people on the
this
verification.
Is cool. Like it looks nice too. Some states other states are doing this. They're just not as the website isn't as like formal and
it's
nice. Yeah, frankly.
This one is honestly it's the best that I've seen of any states. I'm pretty good friends with the guy Jason who does most of the web type stuff on here, and he really does a great job. And it's generally what the main goal is. Like if you go back to the home page, it shows you they want to get 25 species per quad and 10 species per block.
Quadrangle, like the official. Okay.
Yeah. And it's a pretty, you can see it's like almost half of the blocks are filled. And the problem with that is there's a lot of, even in Pennsylvania, a state that has quite a bit of public land, there's a lot of entire quads that don't have any public land.
Right.
So you're limited to road cruising. Like there's areas like right around my house that blocks that I haven't been able to get because it's all private land and it's all, you can road cruise it, till your foot falls off, but sometimes it's just strip mines and cornfields.
Mm-hmm.
And you get and basically like a bullfrog and a garter snake's the only thing that you're going to get unless you really, really hammer it, but you're surprised. It's surprising like what can turn up. And that's why it is that way, because you just never know until you don't know what's common until you go out there, and you don't know what the true range of some things are. Like we get a lot of cool records. But to go back to what you're saying about the rattlesnakes, like Pennsylvania, so they were doing a separate monitoring program for rattlesnakes. I don't know what the status of that is currently. If you if you email the Fish and Boat, they should be able to point you into, or you email PARS, they should be able to point you into a more concrete direction than I can, because I can't remember what the status of that program is. But Pennsylvania, some people might not know this, Pennsylvania is actually one of the few states that has a season for timber rattlesnakes, because they've had these historically, they've had these roundups like they do, like they used to have or still do in the Texas states. Yeah, Morris is one of the roundups. Whenever I was a kid, I had a camp. Well, I still have a camp up in northern PA, and there's generally a pretty good population of rattlesnakes in general in Pennsylvania, but in certain areas of the state, that's why they have some of these roundups. And they used to be a big redneck fest where everyone would, it was a big party, and they would have bagging contests where they dump them out of a bag in this little makeshift boxing ring, and people would see how fast they could pick them up, like with their hands. And
I was next to like the besides Sweetwater, like the second largest roundup now. They're fucking stupid. I don't even.
Yeah, it's crazy. Back
they bring rattlesnakes to like kids parties, and they're like have them headed,
the bloody
holding
hair
the tail, and they're like, I was like, y'all are fucking idiots, and it's just like trashy.
It is, yeah.
It's like, this is cool. I don't know. It's wild. And the DNR down here, their response to any sort of like, like maybe this isn't environmentally sustainable or whatever, is like, we just have a lot. So it seems fine.
Yeah.
So they have basically open bags for a long time during rattlesnake season on all 4 species down here.
Yeah.
Except for maybe like one, like the Massasauga or something small. And then, but you can't barely keep any other natives or whatever. It's like, nah, bull snake, nah. It's basically a pet. Fuck you. But you want to fucking murder as many rattlesnakes as physically possible? Go right ahead, buddy.
Yeah, and that's what it used to be like. And back then, they would have contests for like, aside from the bagging competitions, they would have contests for bringing as many as you possibly can. And there was nothing like, after you brought them in, do whatever you want with them, sell them, kill them all, take them 100 miles away and try to put them in another place.
Are y'all's camps near each other? This is wild.
No, Wellsboro is probably it's at least 2 hours from where my camp is. Wellsboro is starting to get to the part of the state where they start to peter out. But yeah, they since the 80s, back in the 70s and 80s, people started being like, hey, you know what? I don't really see that many rattlesnakes anymore.
Surprise!
I wonder why that is. So they did all these, basically, that's one thing that Pennsylvania has done right is, even back then, they were like, we're going to figure this out and we're going to do something about it. And they did. And they basically did, a bunch of studies. They did some of the earliest telemetry studies were in the early 80s in Pennsylvania with rattlesnakes, where they actually, surgically implanted transmitters. And they figured out that basically if you try to take them from an adult from one den to another, it does not like that. It'll just try to go back to its other one and eventually die. They've recently done. Yeah.
Sorry. I was just going to say, like, that's something people don't think about a lot, because a lot of snakes get relocated in everywhere. Like, oh, there's a venomous snake in my yard. Well, it doesn't matter if you relocate it. You might as well just kill it because, like, it's going to come back to where it knows it needs to be, because it knows if it doesn't find like this rare habitat, which is a hibernacula of some kind, it will die. So it's going to do whatever it can to come back, because it doesn't know it can find one where it is.
Yeah.
Wherever you took it to. So it'll just try to come back. So it's like a death sentence either way.
It might be 50 years old and it's been doing the same thing for that long. So, but yeah, Jamie actually just did a study, with a translocation study in West Virginia. And
Dr. Waldron, people may not know.
Yes. Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So whenever
he's the new herpetology professor of Marshall.
Yep.
Everybody. Sorry. We got to context clue these people. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so they recently just did one of those, and it based off of other, and I think what they were just trying to confirm was what we know about other translocation studies that they've done. And you can sometimes get an adult to stick, but you have to translocate them like essentially like in November and put them at an area where other snakes are denning. So they don't have a choice to crawl around and die. They'll just be like, I need to go underground right now. And if they survive, they essentially
imprint on the new den.
Yeah, you're basically tricking them into imprinting on a new den. I think but then the issue becomes, will they find somewhere to forage after that? Because sometimes as soon as they come out of the den, they'll just be like,
guess I'll starve to death.
Yeah, it's homeward bound. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's tough, especially for you did some work down in like the longleaf pine type area. Who was that with?
I didn't.
Am I making stuff up? Or were you just down there for fun?
Tim, I've been down there for fun quite a few times to look for.
I was on your Instagram.
Eastern Diamondbacks, yeah.
Being nosy.
Yeah, I've also done a little bit of work in Alabama.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, for gopher tortoise. It was like a little. I was essentially delineating wetlands and also looking for black pine snakes, hopefully they would just like crawl out in front of me because they're kind of a hard thing to target, and gopher tortoise burrows. Yeah, that's.
Where was the indigo at?
That was in Georgia, I believe.
Is that like a fun trip or work?
That was fun time.
All right, good. That is fun.
Yeah.
Does Pennsylvania have Massasaugas?
Yes.
In the West?
Okay. Yes, we do. Not a whole lot. Pennsylvania is on the edge of their range.
Are they a species of concern for Pennsylvania because it's the edge?
They've been endangered since the 80s in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. They recently, just as of 2017, I think, were federally listed. They should have been federally listed 30 years ago. Honestly, it's because they're a venomous snake that it took them so long. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I've done a little bit of work construction monitoring for them, and in Pennsylvania, and a little bit in Indiana, and just recently did a couple habitat assessments for them in Michigan. Maybe I should explain what I do for work.
Okay. It's hard. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, go.
Well, going back to what I was saying about the rattlesnake telemetry, because that's where all this started. So I worked on the rattlesnake telemetry study for a whole season after we were done with grad school. And my boss at Penn State, he also did consulting work on the side. And so he had contacts through there, and a couple of people I worked with would do a little bit of consulting work on the side. And at that point in time, this was like 2013, there was still a lot of the gas boom, the fracking boom was still pretty big in northern Pennsylvania. So for timber rattlesnakes in Pennsylvania, whenever they want to do development, and especially back then, if you want to put a pipeline in, or a gas or a well pad or a solar farm or a wind farm, in order to get a permit from the state, you have to submit what you're doing, and they come back and they put it through a database that has like all rare species, from bog turtles to small world, but like rare orchids. Bats are a big one. fish, mussels, all that. And they come back and they say, you have to do X, Y, and Z to get this permit. They have a certain distance buffer around rattlesnake hibernacula and rattlesnake gestation sites.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these lines and these well pads go through some of these areas with a lot of rattlesnakes. They might not go through an area where, even though they're not like going to bulldoze a den, if they're in an area with a lot of snakes, sometimes they'll just be like, hey, you're all good, but you have to have a timber rattlesnake construction monitor from April 15th to October 15th when you're doing construction. So basically what that person is if you're not permitted to handle a snake, they can't just have like random construction workers picking rattlesnakes up and moving them. It's number one, it's not like, it wouldn't technically be legal unless they had a permit and it was in season. And also they want someone there to make sure that other habitat is not being destroyed. So I got into doing that, timber rattlesnake monitoring in Pennsylvania, not just there, but really all over Pennsylvania. They will have it for various projects. Most of it is gas, but they will also do it for wind farms, solar farms, and like big power lines.
So is that a position paid by the state, paid by the company, paid by like an environmental consulting firm, where you're like a 1099 or seasonal employee?
Yeah.
How does that work out?
Yeah, it's almost always going to be a third party because, if the state did it, it would technically be a conflict of interest, as if also if the gas company did it, it would be a conflict of interest. So a third party environmental consulting firm like the one I work for comes in and does it.
Do you still work for one now?
Yes, I do. Okay. So back then I worked for a smaller company, and then I was 1099. So I kind of go back and forth between doing that during the season. And then I started working. Well, first of all, I actually got a job with a nonprofit after that because it was just very unpredictable just doing snake monitoring, because I'd wait around until April and be like, well, we don't have any work. Or like, oh, next week we have like 2 months of work and it's 7 days a week. And that's what you're going to do. So
yeah, it's not to interrupt too bad, but it like trying to string together enough income for a field work based tech or whatever of any field, not just herpetology, is hard. So like, good on you for trying. You don't know how many like ornithologists I met DJing at fucking weddings and stuff, and I'm like, they're like, I couldn't hack it. I'm like, bless your heart, me neither. Okay.
Yeah, it's tough. And see, like when I first started monitoring, there was so much gas work that you pretty much knew that you were going to have a whole season worth of work. And then gas prices went down and they stopped putting a lot of infrastructure in that area. And they really haven't. And basically since then, they haven't really gone back there. I still have a couple friends that mostly still do snake monitoring in PA, but it's not, I would not recommend it as a career choice because there's just not a lot there.
So what do you do for your current consulting firm?
So after that, David and Tim worked for this company called ESI. David and Tim are two people that we went to grad school with as well. And so they worked for ESI. At the time, they worked for ESI. It's a company out of Cincinnati. And that's who I still work for, Environmental Solutions and Innovations.
Do they still work for them? And I guess we should tell people what they do. So they did mussel surveys, but I'm assuming they also do like stream delineation surveys and whatever, right?
Yeah. So
Stuff like that. The stuff that's normal, like you've fucked up a tributary, a 1 in 64,000 tributary. Here's your fine. Here's where the stream was supposed to start, or whatever, right?
Yeah, so they work for another company now.
Okay.
But so what I do now is I didn't want to go back into consulting unless I could get a full-time job. So I'm full-time with this company. I got hired whenever they had a lot of snake monitoring jobs in West Virginia, actually. But I said, I don't want to deal with the unpredictability. I want, a full-time gig, because they're a little bit bigger of a company. They could do that. So,
so do you do like all of it?
Yes, I'll do. We actually don't get a whole lot of herp work because it's based off of what permits you can get in various
people
different
fuck
states.
up water more than they fuck up anything else.
Well, yeah, and yeah. So we do a lot of. My company does a lot of bat work. That's like mostly what my company does. Is we have a lot of permits for, like Indiana bats, northern long-eared bats. Out in the Midwest, that's a very big a big thing, but also in the Northeast as well. But now there's just not a lot of them left.
Yeah, it's good and bad, but like they're very endangered, like federally. Yeah. So there's money to protect them and like incentive to watch them. And so like this is something that's like really weird in particular about like monitoring and fieldwork based jobs is you end up like sort of following the species or like trends that are dying but not dead yet.
Yep.
Which is depressing in its own way, right? But like,
like
somebody needs to monitor something that's like someone cares about, but then you could be watching it decline in its range, because there was a lot of bat money floating around, even in my undergrad, because they all had like, what was it called, white nose syndrome or whatever.
Yeah. A lot of, at this point, sometimes we can have trouble getting someone permitted for Indiana bats because we don't have, because, it used to be you go out and net them on a certain project and you would see several, and we still do in certain states. But now, so like, in West Virginia, it's not a very common thing to get Indiana bats anymore. And most of the Northeast is like that now, even more so now with the northern long-eared bats. That basically, for those who are unfamiliar, there's a fungus called white nose syndrome that came from Asia, and whenever the bats get it, bats that hibernate in a cave, they will spread it throughout the cave, because there'll be there could be tens of thousands of them in one cave of all species, and it basically wakes them up out of hibernation. They fly out of the cave and freeze to death. So that's why a lot of bats are rare now in the U.S. and why a lot of caves are very hard to get into.
Did you get a pre-exposure rabies vax?
See, I actually don't do very much bat work, so I don't ever need to get I haven't got it because I haven't worked enough projects where I'm going to be handling bats. So I say that we don't get a lot of herp work, but like this past year, I did pretty much mostly just snake monitoring in West Virginia and wood turtle monitoring. And
number one, woodies.
Yeah. And I've been doing bird surveys pretty much most of the summer for the last 3 years. So we were lucky enough to do a lot of
string together enough jobs. Is that like a seniority thing? Do you have to like fight for it, like among the techs or something?
It's really just whoever's qualified to do it most of the time.
Okay. Where'd you do your woody work?
So we did. So in Virginia, wood turtles are state threatened. So have a couple of projects out there where we do some stuff for them. One of them was it's a power line rebuild. So see, the thing is, like with a lot of rare herp species, that are listed like in states in the Northeast, because most of the states in the South don't have a list. So unless it's fairly listed like a black pine snake, they don't care. You can do whatever you want. And they also don't have a lot of gas work down south in the southeastern states where there's listed stuff. So like something like a power line rebuild, the power line was there, 60 years ago. So they don't have a choice but to deal with a species that might be listed. So I was doing some monitoring for wood turtles, and basically on the very southern end of their range. Only ended up seeing one. The one girl who took over for me ended up seeing one on the road. So
you were just walking around looking for them, period.
Yeah. So like whenever I'd be snake monitoring or wood turtle monitoring, I go and I hang out. So this is active construction. So say it's like a gas, like where I was monitoring this year, or most of the time when I was monitoring West Virginia, it's a big pipeline. The construction effort is huge. Like there might be, like I get to where they're meeting and there might be 50 people there with, 10 excavators, bulldozers. Like it's a big operation. And my job is to like check and make sure
there's no turtles under the excavators.
Yeah, that usually doesn't happen. Yeah. That's more of something for desert tortoises out west, that they're really big on. But and a lot of the older guys, they always want me to check all around their machinery or in their machinery for rattlesnakes. They're
they think that you're like protecting them.
Well,
you kind of are, but like,
yeah, kind of.
They want you to be like, protect me.
Yeah, but I think what they don't they think that, and I mean, how can you really blame them? Who's going to teach them this? A lot of people think that at nighttime, snakes, once it gets cold, they crawl around and look for warm places.
Like, so they're crawling in like the engine bay, and so every night there's 10 rattlesnakes crawling in there.
Yeah, they don't understand. I think maybe in the old days, whenever the machines were like not as efficient and it took them like 2 hours to cool down, maybe that was a thing. But it just most of those excavators are cooled down in like, I don't know, I would say at least within a half an hour. But also I have to explain to them, I'm like, when snakes are cold, they don't just crawl around. They don't have energy to crawl around. They just sit there. They just hunker down. They're not going to go looking around. And they're also not going to lay on top of like a big open steel thing that's going to be
right. They would need like thermal inertia to find a spot to warm up, but they don't know that spot is warm because they're not like instinctually geared into like, oh, motor vehicles have some sort of retained heat.
Yeah. I mean, it's something like I mean, cats might do that, but not
sometimes snakes are found like in people's hoods, but I think that's just a snake just hiding. It's actually hiding there. Yeah.
I have a guy. Yeah.
Sorry, Emma. Like the southern wood turtle range ends like Shenandoah Valley, like mid Shenandoah Valley.
Yeah.
I don't know, like Stanton or something. What's the nearest city?
In that area generally, like what you said, like the Shenandoah Valley. They're generally a northern Great Lakes, northeastern species. Right.
So every time we have a glacial event, they're like, "Fuck, we gotta go to Georgia."
Yeah.
Do you see the fox snake paper where they're like, they used to be split by one glacial period, and then they got split the wrong way. So half of one subspecies is mixed in with the western one. So like they got split once, speciated, split again, and then it created like a disjunct population. But the other population has both subspecies mixed into it. Isn't that funny? We're fucked. Science is fucked.
Yeah, I love thinking about the distributions of a lot of those species. Like in my free time, I just go out and try to look for stuff. Like I want to find new spots. Like I want to help. It's
fill in the map.
Number one, it helps the state know where things are. So if someone wants to be like, hey, we're going to build a Walmart here, I could be like, well, I found this there. That's not exactly how it works, but generally, like, but I also do it just to satisfy my own curiosity. Like the ranges of certain species, like literally keep me up at night. Like Kirtland snakes, like all these glaciated species that don't really, or like Blanding's turtle, they like are doing awesome in Nebraska and also in like, but they're also in like Nova Scotia and like
it's weird how
one
like
spot in
stochastic
Pennsylvania.
it is, because when you see a range map, it's like it looks like a continuous blob. Nah, even if you like remove like human impacts, the environment is stochastic. The residual habitats left behind each post glaciation event change each time. So where these like temperate species end up is crazy sometimes.
Yeah, like the glaciation has such a big effect, and it's not just temperature. It's like they just bring in a bunch. It's like, for example, in Pennsylvania, in northwest Pennsylvania, there's a lot of the glaciers brought down a lot of sands and gravels and certain types of rock and soil that is calcareous that wouldn't otherwise be there. Brings up lots of different like special wetland communities, and there used to be bog turtles up there, and that's in the Prairie Peninsula for the Massasaugas. And same thing with the Kirtland snake. There's like all kinds of weird stuff going on, not just the temperature. And people also think of like the glaciers as being like it being like the day after tomorrow, but we really don't know what it was like. Like I talked to a guy that used to look for Massasaugas a lot in Pennsylvania, and he was talking about the possibility of them being in areas like a couple miles from the glaciers. Like
like there was a point where the glaciers were growing so fast, like accreting so fast that it was like plains, ice sheet.
Yeah,
like that's
like a mile high.
Right. So like that's like a weird like
fathom.
ice age joke that just did happen. And eventually like the plains would die back and it would go to tundra or whatever. But like there was points where it was very fast. So like yeah, your little Woody could have come up to that and been like, what the fuck is this? And then walked away, right? It's crazy.
And also we don't know what the temperature was like. Like we think of it maybe being as like just cold all the time, but it might have just been I think some people think that it was basically like really mild, like it might have just been like 50 to 60 degrees year round, or not like you might think of it being like negative 50 in the winter and like just a little bit warmer in the summer, but we really don't know what a lot of the weather was like back then.
Like the fossil record is actually fucking nuts. Like, because we have old boas in the East Coast and coral snakes just like 10 million years ago. So it was like really warm like 10 million years ago. And then we have these like interglacial events, and like the speed of them is really fast. And we're still technically in a glaciation period.
Don't tell people that.
Sorry. All right. Do you like board lines or flipping natural objects to find species, road cruising? What's your favorite technique for, let's go with snakes first.
Yes.
They're all different.
So for timber rattlesnakes in the Northeast, generally the way I target those is looking for areas with open canopy in the middle of a bunch of closed canopy. So like if you have an area where there's not a lot of where the forest is old and there's not a lot of openings, if rattlesnakes are there, they're gonna, the gravid females and the shedding and all the other snakes that are shedding in June will kind of flock to areas like the edge of a gas line or something like that, where it's rocky. They can get sun, but they can also escape. So that's different from the South, where there's no rocks or there's no hillsides. So down south, it's mostly road cruising or finding, abandoned farms to dig through tin and garbage or whatever.
Right. Like the resource is like specificity is not as tight in the South. So that's why when people are like, yeah, you should road cruise. I'm like, you can road cruise all day and you'll see toads in like West Virginia sometimes, unless there's like something going on, because the snakes are like very specifically moving from their hibernaculum to wherever they eat, no matter the species almost. And like, that's all they do. They're not roaming around aimlessly because all the temperature is pretty good all the time. So they're not interacting with roads as much.
I loathe road cruising. I hate it.
You get bored?
Yeah, because, and also it's not just about like it being boring, but also like when I want to see a species, I like to see it in the wild, in its environment. I would rather not ever even disturb it. And that's the nice thing about rattlesnakes is a lot of times you don't have to. Like you can see, because the gravid females are more predictable. So they can be in an area, they might use the same area year after year. And you can go and just sit there and watch them sitting there out. Like if the weather is good, if the time of year is good, they might just sit there, a couple of different ones, and just hang out all day. And you could sit there and watch them, or you could sit there and watch a male crawl up and like sniff around and figure out that they're not good. He's got to go somewhere else. These ones are taken.
Right. Well, rattlesnakes are like surprisingly cool. I think people think, and maybe like Western Diamondbacks are different because they're like little shits, but timbers are like, you could sit down next to them and like vibe.
Yeah.
To me, like every time one I've ever seen is, even if they start to rattle a little bit, they're like, oh, whatever. They just sort of give up.
Yeah, I found a spot in West Virginia recently. It's one of the better spots I've found where like there's a bunch, there's all kinds of snakes there hanging out, and most of the spots
are on your Instagram. Keep talking.
Yeah, somewhere. I have all kinds of rattlesnake pictures on there, but
I just want to find a picture of them vibing.
Yeah. So a lot of the spots in Pennsylvania, this varies very much from place to place. And if you go on my flick, like I can sit eye level and just watch those snakes, like a lot of spots in Pennsylvania, the snakes are very skittish. And I don't know if that has to do with because there's a hunting season for them there, or there's more predators, because there's spots in New York where they're very chill and they don't rattle. They like most spots in Pennsylvania, once you get within 30 yards, they rattle and they go under a rock, and they're not coming back out for like, you might have to sit there for an hour before they come back out. But other spots you go, like the one spot I was at in West Virginia, like I can go there and sit, and most of the snakes don't rattle. The ones that do go under come back out within 5 minutes. They're all just like moving around. As long as you're not like
making a lot of movement.
And like grabbing at them. Like if you're just chill and you sit there and you can actually watch them do some pretty cool stuff. That's why. And so like knowing that I can go to a spot and do that makes it a lot less intriguing for me to go and road cruise and have to just see it on pavement and scare it the hell off the road. But but the areas that I go and herp in, I can afford to do that. If you're in the South, you just don't have a choice for a lot of species, depending on what time of year you're out.
Because they're not as tightly compacted in the landscape. You have to cover a lot of ground to, like your unit catch per man hour is not good if you're not covering a lot of ground.
But for some species, like the survey, like the official protocol, like to officially go out and do a survey that will be for, like, say, a company wants to go out, like, or like this project I was on in Indiana, like a railroad project, for certain species like the Kirtland snake, that is the best way to find them, is to flip them under boards or garbage or whatever. So the official survey protocol is, in order to figure out if this species is here for Kirtland snake, you have to go out and put X amount of boards per acre and check them X amount of times before we're confident that you're not going to kill a bunch of them. You know, it's always presence, probable absence, because it's really hard to, you know, for some species like a Kirtland snake to know whether or not they're actually not there.
Yeah, which is, I don't know. It's still kind of cool that like there are whole species that everyone ignores and are doing fine. But then if they disappear, you don't know that they disappeared because you didn't know they were there in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. Like I spend a lot of time. It's probably like could be considered like self-masochism, but I spent a lot of time looking for Kirtland snakes in Pennsylvania, which haven't been seen in the state since 1969.
What counties were they recorded in?
Mostly the Pittsburgh metro area.
Very random. Okay. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean some of the best areas to find them now are in like cities in the Midwest, like in the ghetto. Vacant lots. And I say this, you know, obviously
do they get beat up by like atrazine, like greens and stuff too? Because they eat bugs.
Kirtlands are they're what's the right word I'm looking for? Enigma. They will live in the most pristine bog or wetland, like up in Michigan or Ohio or Indiana, and then they'll be like in a ditch in a cornfield in the middle of nothing, in the middle of Ohio or whatever, and then they'll be like in the hood in Cincinnati in like a wet.
That's funny.
Like
but
a
nobody
wet
knows
pile
why.
of garbage. No.
Are they like a post-glacial problem animal? Like they got scoured from the earth and it's just relictal populations?
So in a lot of places they're really associated with crayfish burrows, but in some areas like down in Kentucky and Ohio, they're more associated with like limestone, like karst. They just are underground a lot, and the only thing that we can figure out they like is wet and grass. That's like the only thing that's like a constant in most of their. Probably just worms.
All right.
But, you know, a lot of people don't realize that prior to the Europeans coming over here, we didn't have a whole lot of worms. Most earthworms that you see are non-native.
Right. That's true.
And some of them are like really bad, invasive. Like, I think that's one of the big reasons. Like there's certain hillsides in Pittsburgh, you look up, you're like, man, that's weird. For that being the woods, I don't see a whole lot of leaf litter up there. It's because goddamn worms devoured all of it.
Yeah, most of New England shouldn't have any worms, period, because it should have been post-glacial, no worms.
You familiar with the short-head garter snake?
No.
It's a species. It almost is probably 100 years ago. It was endemic to Pennsylvania, if not very small portions of New York. So it's a worm eater, and it only lived up in like north central Pennsylvania and in the high plateau. But since then it's expanded like into Ohio and New York, and there's some introduced populations of it. Like there's one in Pittsburgh, like a smaller introduced population that they're really cool. And it's not something.
Where were they native to? Oh, it's just like further north?
Pennsylvania.
But they were native to further north and they expanded down?
No, they were always found in Pennsylvania. Okay. And,
but they're a worm eater where there's no native worms or few native worms.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like they probably were so they're very similar morphologically to the Butler's garter snake. which is a species that's out, and probably also the plains garter snake. Those are species out in Ohio. They just look like a regular garter, but they have like no neck.
Do they like snails, slugs?
Yeah,
because usually that's like an easy substitute.
I think so. There's an interesting paper about the there's a guy up in Erie that studies them quite a bit, and is looking at different species of like the distribution of different earthworms up there, and distribution of short-headed garters. Very interesting stuff. It might seem like a lot of people kind of think of the Southeast as this mecca of herping, which, you know, it is. There's a lot of really cool stuff down there, but I think, you know, a species like the short-head garter is very underrated. It's like essentially an endemic for this area. Yeah.
What about where do you want to herp that you haven't herped yet in maybe the U.S. or the world, I guess? Like, do you want to do West Texas? People like beat off West Texas so hard.
This is gonna sound like kind of weird for a herp person, but there's not a whole lot of, like, if I had, you know, a month of perfect weather to go look for stuff, I would like probably go to West Virginia and look for green salamanders to figure out exactly what their range is. That's just the way my brain is wired. Maybe it's
all right. Tell people what green salamanders are. They don't know. They don't know how weird they are. Probably. I'll get a picture. You talk.
But to answer your question before, if I could go anywhere, it would probably be like Peru, the Amazon, Andes. That's has the coolest like pit fight. Like I think all those pit vipers and stuff are cool, and there's just a lot of cool stuff down there. I mean, I'd love to see a bushmaster. I mean, come on. But yeah, I think because I'm so limited because of my work, it puts me in areas where I get like really obsessed with one or two species. Like I'm really obsessed with timber rattlesnakes, green salamanders, spotted turtles, wood turtles, and Kirtland snakes. Like that's what occupies most of my mind. So with green salamanders, so they're the only Aeneades climbing species in the East. There's a couple other species out west, but they're confined to the Appalachians. But they have like there's a disjunct population that was just discovered like, I don't know, 10 or 20 years ago in Indiana. They go from, so Pennsylvania is a very northern extent of their range. So I'm constantly looking for areas where they could be in Pennsylvania that they haven't been found yet. And they're just, because they only live, so they generally live in big rock outcrops, but they also go up into trees, especially in the summer, which you don't think of when you think of the Eastern U.S. Like the Aeneades species in the Pacific Northwest, you know, they live in like redwoods and like huge trees that you would think like, oh, I would expect the salamander to live in that tree that's like as big as a skyscraper. But we don't realize that, you know, 99% or whatever of the old growth forests in the U.S., the Eastern U.S. is gone. So we really don't know what these things were doing in an old growth for a true vast tracts of old growth forest. So they could be in areas
with chestnut trees that were rivals of redwoods in size, you know, so like it made sense that we had a species like that here too. But I think people forget that like the Eastern deciduous forest is a kneecap. Both knees have been shotgunned out, and now it's like trying to figure out what to do with itself. 100 years later.
Yeah, because we don't really know, like, does this species really only like rocks and sometimes goes into trees? Or are they completely fine in rocks or trees, but we only find them in rocks now because that's all that's left? So they could be in it. So it's possible that they can be in areas where there's very few rocks, but it's been overlooked because people are like, oh, there's not enough rocks there. But they could have been there, 100 years ago. They were just hanging out in trees, and you might completely miss them. And that area might be like, it might be an area that might get developed, and you could lose them and you don't even know it. So that's part of my reason for wanting to find them.
Of a
also because I just think they're really cool. I mean, look at them.
Right. Here's the little Indiana disjunct. It's very strange that would happen just magically. Obviously, glacial, whatever, fuck. But this was all like a squirrel could jump,
yeah.
There's obviously we're native fucking people down here burning and having fun, having cool stuff. But like in the north, there were less native tribes, so they weren't doing as much controlled burns. So like there were a lot of big ass trees.
Yeah. They basically would burn like entire counties and be like, all right, we're going to leave that area for a couple years until the blueberries come up. Then we're going to go hunt there.
That was all West Virginia was.
Yeah.
Like Moundsville, people lived there, but nobody lived in the middle. That was like hunting ground that that bigger, better tribes fought over and burned.
Yeah. You
probably should go back to that. Let's just be honest.
I mean, looking for green salamanders, it's like crawling, spend a lot of time crawling through rhododendron and like greenbrier up in rocks. It's like Native Americans didn't want to do that either.
Right.
They're completely, like nobody wants to walk through that shit except for like weirdos like me. So
have you ever seen a chestnut tree that wasn't a hybrid intentionally planted, but just like saw one? Like,
oh yeah, I see them. I see them pretty often.
Okay. I know there's like a chestnut registry too. Like if you find one, you can like geotag it.
I mean, it's rare to see it like a true native chestnut that's bigger than like.
Right, because they get killed.
Yeah, because they all have the blight, and which I didn't know this until a couple years ago, that the blight is in oak trees everywhere around them. That's why they get it as soon as they
right
come
away.
up.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
But it doesn't affect those oak trees.
Fuck oak trees.
Yeah, kill them all. But yeah, chestnut in certain parts of Virginia, there's like you can go into the Blue Ridge and the Shenandoah Mountains in Virginia and see like sometimes the understory is completely dominated by American chestnut saplings. Like,
is it? Like I've been to the Arboretum down there, like, and looked at their like chestnut collection or whatever the fuck, but I've never.
No, go up to like, if you're like in Christiansburg or Stanton or any of those little towns along the western part of Virginia, if you go up into the mountains on like a south facing slope or a west facing slope,
it's all chestnuts. It's
all
good
chestnut.
Tip.
Yeah.
Like I've been like done Skyline Drive, like stopped at different spots, hiked. My buddy used to work at Shenandoah National Park as like an invasive species pesticide sprayer.
Yeah.
So we used to go down there and like hang out, but I never hung out. That's a good tip. If anybody's East Coaster, you want to go see chestnuts before they're all even more dead. I don't know.
Well, they have a GMO one that has a lot of potential, but what the problem is that everyone thinks GMOs are like the devil. So they don't want to put these there's a lot of regulations. There's a lot of regulations that
I should make it a banner.
Yeah. There's a lot of regulations preventing them from releasing this essentially blight resistant GMO chestnut.
I mean, you don't think the hybrids are good enough? What are people's thoughts these days?
So the American Chestnut Foundation and SUNY ESF are two of the places that do a lot of research on them. And from what I understand, you'd have to look more into this, but I think they've given up on the hybrids.
I mean, it's been going on for like 20 years where they like, this one's kind of good. And then,
they've gotten to where they have 15/16 American Chinese and they're still getting the blight.
Okay, so here's a fucking question. What if we just got the Chinese one? Would it be that bad?
It's the Chinese one is it's more of like I think it's more of like an open canopy one.
Oh, it's not.
It's short. It doesn't get as tall. The nuts are The nuts are. I
The
think the nuts
nuts
are
are
actually
no good.
bigger.
Okay. Tell me more
they're-
about their nuts.
Yeah.
I'm in.
I just don't think. I think that if they would be a good species that would be in the woods, they probably would be everywhere by now. You would think.
I don't know. It's always been like weird to me. Like there was an ecosystem service. A GMO one would be fine. Fuck it.
Yeah, they're like, my dream is that I will be alive someday where they're just dropping like millions of chestnuts out of helicopters, like a B-52 bomber or something. Just like, oh, there's a clear cut.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks that they aren't doing it right now, because I think that from what I understand, we have them and they're ready to go. There's just basically bureaucratic red tape that is preventing it. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on this by any means, but
I mean, I guess there's a question, like a Jurassic Park type question. Even if human beings fucked it up to begin with, are we allowed to do what is essentially like ecosystem engineering using a keystone species, but one that we changed? Are we allowed to? I don't know. This is a stupid ethical question. Like, obviously we fuck shit up constantly, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I meant to like cyanobacteria ends up in like West Virginia streams. We're like brewing up the next big dinoflagellate disaster every day, and nobody gives a fuck.
For sure.
So like a GMO tree that's resistant to blight to make eastern deciduous forests something like what they were would be sweet to me.
I think it has a gene from wheat in it that is giving it, or they deleted one. I can't remember. Who knows?
Okay. It's all right. I don't know what to do. It is very seasonal though. I'm glad chestnuts came up. I think it's the thing people like forget about. And then it's just like, it doesn't matter, I guess. Cause like people have a problem of like, we have this much development and this many subdivisions come in, and everything was pretty good when I was little. Mm-hmm. It's been like in shitification of the Eastern Seaboard for a long time. Some things have improved, like, like fucking white-tailed deer were almost endangered.
Yeah.
Now they're good. Go ahead and shoot
the rats.
You have to kick them out of your way on the way out the door. But
there aren't a lot of trees that basically, like red maple is the only tree that isn't being have some kind of thing affecting it. Like gypsy moth is hammering a lot. Like last couple of years have been bad, real bad for gypsy moth in PA and some parts of West Virginia. It does create good rattlesnake habitat sometimes, but the problem is that then all the oak trees are dead, so the chipmunks and mice have nothing to eat. So the gravid female, so the females take like 10 years to get gravid or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's and then the hemlock woolly adelgid is killing a lot of hemlock trees, and that can fuck up the streams. That can fuck up all kinds of stuff. Nothing. The happening. Oh my god,
that's not gonna happen.
I wish something would have happened in that movie.
The movie was the worst.
I saw it in theaters.
Me too. I'm sad I paid money for it.
Yeah. Whatever. What are you gonna do? So someone asked a question before about the venom.
Yeah, you talk about that. I'm gonna go to the Banyo.
Yep.
Just woman problems. All right.
What was the question about different kinds of venom for different areas that they're in? I seem to remember someone asking with timber rattlesnakes. So they have a hemotoxic venom. So it essentially destroys red blood cells, as opposed to a neurotoxic venom that goes straight to the nervous system. And essentially what neurotoxic venom does is it targets the diaphragm. It wants to paralyze the diaphragm, so whatever it's eating can't breathe. So cobras, all the elapids, they all have neurotoxic venom. All the pit vipers have hemotoxic venom. But there are some rattlesnakes that also have neurotoxic venom. Several of the ones out west, like the Mojave rattlers, and then in the east, the eastern diamondbacks, they have it's called a type B venom in the east, or the Mojave venom. It's been a while since I've read up on this, so I'm kind of rusty on it. But the gist of it is there are some species, like when I was saying before about the canebrakes and the timbers, some of the canebrakes in the southeastern U.S. have this type B and neurotoxic venom, as well as the hemotoxic venom. And generally the way venoms work with snakes is that it's like an arms race between the prey. They want to kill. The venom's job, the job of venom is to kill or subdue their prey before it has a chance to hurt the snake. So it probably has something to do with bigger prey items. Some people think it has to do with canebrakes eating more gray squirrels in the southeast. But yeah, that's one of the things that's different about canebrakes from timbers. But I don't know if I'm not super up to date on the research. There could be like montane, like actual timber rattlesnakes that have type B venom as well. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me. Venom also varies wildly based on the diet of a snake, based on the last time it ate and the type of prey that it's eating. So you could get if you're bit by a random timber rattlesnake in the woods, how that venom affects you, there's a lot of variables. Number one, if you're allergic to the venom, like you would be allergic to a bee, that's about the worst thing that can happen. Then you can go into anaphylactic shock. And a lot of the cases of people dying, of humans dying from wild timber rattlesnake bites, which happens very rarely, like it's called a legitimate bite from a venomous snake with a timber rattlesnake, happens very rarely because they're generally pretty docile. Like the ones in the Northeast, like you really have to mess with them most of the time in order to get them to bite you. Now, that doesn't mean that you could just go up to a random snake and pick it up.
What do you mean?
You never know. I know. I mean, I see idiots free handling them, and I'm just
that's like most what? Bites. Period.
Yeah, yeah.
Alcohol, testicles,
yeah, or church,
or church.
yeah. Yeah, but what was I gonna say? It really depends. Like, if you're just walking in the woods or on a trail, like the chances of one biting you, it's like even in the densest populations of rattlesnakes. I mean, I've go out looking for rattlesnakes. Next to one. I've stepped on them. I like stepped on, like when I was doing telemetry, I'd be like, I'm like standing there with the antenna being like, I know it's here somewhere. Oh, it's under my foot. And it didn't even rattle. Like some of them are just weird like that.
My video's lagging out a little bit.
Yeah, mine is too.
That's all right. Where's the weirdest place you've seen a baby rattlesnake? Like, they're like kind of semi-arboreal. Like how high above your head have you seen them?
I've seen them. Yeah, you will see the juveniles, especially. There was a site where there was like a rock outcrop. It was when I was doing telemetry. Real steep cliff, which is pretty common for these gestation sites where rattlesnakes hang out, because they're like, if the rock is high, if the cliff is high enough so that trees can't get above it, then it's open and there's lots of blueberry bushes around it and places for them to hang out. And yeah, so it was a real steep drop off with rhododendron hanging down, and there were several young of the year rattlesnakes hanging out in the rhododendron. And then there was another spot I know like that had rhododendron hanging down, and I've seen like copperheads and young rattlesnakes like crawling through the rhododendron, hanging out like that.
It's kind of crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not crazy. They're a lot of like truly terrestrial adults have like a semi-arboreal baby to utilize like heat resources. Like, it makes sense. It's just people don't think about it. Like, they could be running their hands on like a fucking laurel bush, and dropping little rattlesnakes down. Just gotta be like aware of what you're doing.
Yeah, like probably the most risky thing you could do to like actually legitimately accidentally get bit by a rattlesnake is like picking blueberries and like
fuck blueberries is what you're saying.
I mean, I've picked blueberries in areas where I know there's a lot of rattlesnakes. Yeah. So it's, I mean, if you're paying attention, you should be fine. But yeah, anyway, we were also doing telemetry, and we had a snake that was like it was a postpartum female, and it spent like most of the summer like 15 feet up in a pitch pine tree.
But post parturition female.
Yeah, like it was gravid the previous year, gave birth the previous year.
What was she doing up in that tree?
I would like to know. I think that some parts, so that part of PA has quite a bit of red squirrels or pine squirrels.
And so she learned maybe that she could hunt them if she just hung out in the crook of a tree.
I think so, because I don't know why. Because postpartum females, like, so it takes rattlesnakes or timber rattlesnakes in the Northeast a really long time. Like, they average, especially females, like 6 to 7 years before they're sexually mature. And then after they are gravid and give birth, it takes at least 2 to 3 years for them to be gravid again, sometimes like 5, because they don't eat the whole time that they're gravid. They're just focused on like, they need to give birth with enough time to forage before going back into hibernation in order to like have a really good chance at surviving. So that's why they need to have that high temperature throughout the summer. And even whenever they do come back out of hibernation, you could see like the loose skin, it's like, after someone gets gastric bypass surgery, that's kind of what the snake will look like, with these loose skin folds. And for a postpartum female to not be foraging after, the year after like that, I would think that if it was up in that tree because it was foraging for something, otherwise it would have been dead. It would have been dead very, very soon.
Was it dead?
No.
Did you see it alive after that? Like, did a hawk drop its carcass in the tree?
No, we followed it.
Okay.
It went into a den afterwards. So, yeah.
I mean, you would think, I don't know. Obviously, like, some vipers become bird specialists and get faster and faster acting venom. And so they're not doing that yet. But there's a lot of birds that are like leaf litter birds. Like, like thrushes and towhees and shit. They could take a towhee or thrush or something. Definitely.
Whenever I was tracking snakes, like constantly come across ovenbirds and black-throated blue warblers. They're ground nesters, worm-eating warblers. You come across them all the time, like very close to where the rattlesnakes are.
Take the chicks?
Yeah.
Because they can't run away?
I would, yeah, probably. Maybe like when they're a fledgling and they're just kind of bopping around and they're more exposed.
Right. And then they can like track them after they bite them,
Yeah, without them flying. Yeah, because that's the whole thing is like, for those who don't know, like they don't just like bite them and hang on and swallow them. They bite them and just
right. That's dangerous.
Let them go. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Lisa asks, do timbers have huge communal hibernaculum like prairies or Norpacks do?
It depends on where they are at. So it depends on the geology of the area. In part, there are certain parts of the Appalachians that have like like a granite geology that doesn't have a lot. It's very hard geology, hard rock that doesn't have a lot of openings in it. In spots like that where there might be, only a couple of like suitable holes for them to get down into to get below. They just need to get below the frost line, but they also have to have some kind of moisture. So like dehydration is a big thing with hibernate. I'm sure a lot of anyone who keeps snakes that puts them into hibernation probably knows this.
Yeah, we have to give them water because they'll just like dry out, right? So they have to sort of be awake. They're like awake enough to know to go to drink a little sippy of water.
So they need to have like, it's almost always some kind of southerly facing slope in the Appalachians where you have that high temperature, but you also have to have some kind of access to water. We really don't know what exactly they need because we don't know what it looks like underground. We can just infer certain things indirectly based on what it looks like on the surface. Dens can be very challenging to find. Yeah, like certain geologies that don't have a lot of openings or it's not that suitable, you could have several hundred timbers in one den. Most of the spots though where in the Central Appalachians and PA, a lot of the places where there's still really abundant, where there's really good populations, it's usually because there is some resource that is abundant. Like a lot of the places with that geology I was talking about, with like that granite type geology, a lot of them have like really open rocky knobs where there's a ton of open canopy stuff where gestation habitat is not limiting at all. Like they don't have a problem finding that, but they might have a problem finding a den. Then there are other areas, like a lot of places in Pennsylvania, where the geology for denning is really good. Like you have these sandstone, talus type slopes. It might be underlined by some kind of softer geology where the water comes off the hillside, hits the sandstone, and it seeps down and just trickles and makes these little bunch of good little spaces for them to hibernate. And they could hibernate like basically at a certain point in elevation, they could hibernate like anywhere on a south or southwest facing slope. But the gestation site habitat might be limiting.
How much do your timbers share with other snake species? Or they tend to pick ones? Okay.
They don't care. Most dens that I've found, you almost always see rat snakes, racers, garters, copper. If there are copperheads in the area, they're almost always in the same den. Usually hognoses can make their own den essentially if the soil's right, and if they're probably not going to be there if the soil's not right. But yeah, always rat snakes, racers, copperheads, and garters. I have some cool pictures of like garter snakes like laying out on top.
On your Instagram?
On my Flickr.
Bro, yeah, who flickers now? It's the fucking 2023.
I don't. That's what I mean. Like I haven't posted a new picture on there in like, I don't know, 7 years or something, but I used to have a lot of pictures on there. But yeah, I'm not that familiar with like the Nordpacks in the prairies, but from what I understand, it's a similar situation where the hibernacula habitat is limited. So that's why they're all in one area.
Right. It's kind of crazy. And it means like each young of the year, like
all of them there.
Like, yeah, they have to follow them backwards. They have to know, like rattlesnakes are born maybe near it, maybe not. It depends if it's at the denning site or not. But like a baby Pantherophis is born fuck all in like a tree stump somewhere.
Yeah.
It has to know that it should smell adults fleeing in a particular direction because that is the only hibernacula maybe within a couple 100 acres around. Otherwise, they're dead. Yep. That's fucking magical. Because they'll follow sympatric species that aren't their species.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
How do
we
they
really
do
don't
that?
know.
That's crazy.
We don't know.
They're talking
Magnets.
to each other with their little tails or something.
They have a magnet in their brain. I don't know.
But they have to do it over and over again every generation. And I'm sure most of them like fucking freeze to death and die, right? But enough of them know to follow back, like some adult to somewhere. Hopefully, the adult you follow isn't stupid, right?
Yeah. They I've seen a lot of this with. It was like this is one of the things that telemetry was really nice for, like, because we had several gravid females that had transmitters in them, and you see them like mid-August start to leave. Sometimes some of them would leave, some of them would give birth at the gestation site. It seemed like a lot of them would leave, and they would give birth in an area with more cover. So I think it has something to do with predation, as well as getting closer to the den. So
do you think babies eat between birth and going down?
Yeah, definitely, because I think it's pretty imperative for them to shed prior to going into hibernation.
Like their second shed, like their post, like they'll have a postnatal shed. And do you think they need to grow enough to have the second shed?
No, it is the postnatal shed.
Okay.
But I think they feed enough so that they will get so that it really depends.
Like
on when
woodies and shit can like overwinter in there. They have enough yolk or whatever that they can be stuck in their nest overwinter. It's fine. Or they can emerge if temps were good. Either of those options, totally cool, totally fine. And so for the snakes that take a long time to get ready, they're not necessarily burning a ton of energy if it's cold enough when they're born. So could they go down after one shed and never have eaten at all in like the northern part of the range? Anyway,
I think they probably could. I think it would depend on how healthy the female was.
She was giving enough good juice to the babies.
Yeah, that's why it's really important for the female to get as fat as possible, and that's why like things like acorn, like hard mast numbers that affect the small mammal population are very imperative.
Can you imagine how big the rattlesnakes would be if we had chestnut trees?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. All right. Have you seen male combat in timbers or in
I have seen it.
Okay. You want to talk about that? Was it cool? How do you feel?
Yeah. So I've only seen it like full on one time. Unfortunately, it was it was like in dense, like dark rhododendron. So the pictures were essentially useless. I've seen it like close to happening other times. It's, so they lock up. Most pit vipers do it. There's not a lot of like some snakes, like, I don't know, like with like dusky pygmies, like pygmy rattlers. I don't know if there's a whole lot of observations of them doing it. There's a pretty popular video that's going around of a copperhead and a cottonmouth going at it.
Fighting?
Yeah.
Was that on TikTok?
It was years ago. I remember seeing it.
Listen, we're a multimedia podcast. We can do it. Keep talking.
Yeah. But yeah, most people when they see it, it's timbers, and it's usually some random person that doesn't know anything about snakes sees it, and they're like, "Oh my god, they're mating!" And
it's so beautiful.
But it's really cool. I've seen it at a gestation site where a male was trying to court several gravid females that were obviously very non-receptive, and there was a smaller male there, and it ended up trying to mate with the male's head, and it got pissed, and
the quality's not good. But
was that right? Is it a copperhead? Yeah.
It's funny. I mean, there's probably the stank of both of them all around these tins, and so there's like, I'll fight, whatever, it's fine. But they do hybridize every once in a while in the south.
Have you seen the canebrake Eastern Diamondback hybrids?
No.
Yeah, there's one.
Or
There's
I
one that
guess not.
popped up in the. There's one that popped up in the wild a couple years ago down there. I think they actually did telemetry with it.
Does the loser run away depressed
Yeah.
or okay?
Very shameful.
I don't know what's with the lag right now. Oh,
during the looks good now.
All right, I'm lagged out. It's all right. Nobody cares what we look like anyway.
Yeah, no one wants to see me.
Yeah.
The during the breeding season though, the males can get like kind of weird, and you can put a stick up or your hand or whatever, and they'll rise up to you. It's
so they'll try to fight a stick, like combat a stick. That's
or
funny.
or you sometimes like
like your foot.
They just get like roid rage, like Jersey Shore like style, all broed out, and like they'll come up once they realize that you're not a snake. They get like, you could tell they just like they get like pissed and they're done. But I've had
this is Atrox Horridus hybrid. Is there another one?
There was Adamantius. I saw the picture of it when you searched it.
Oh fuck. This one?
Yeah. I think that's it.
They look cool.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
tell anybody I said that. It doesn't want to look. All right, yeah. It's funny, like how, like in snakes, I don't know if you knew this, like in captivity, we can do terrible things, like Lampropeltis and the artist formerly known as Alafe. They fucking eat each other, but you can trick them into all kinds of stuff.
Well, they get bored enough, I guess. They'll just be
right. I'll put my dick in it. No problem.
we could do this.
What about bats? Are bats using the same structures as snakes, in your opinion, ever?
Probably very rarely, especially most of the cave hibernacula bats. Most of the time, caves are too big and
cold.
Wet, big, cold, and wet, and probably have a lot of air blowing out of them. I think for snakes, generally, like you'd be surprised what a timber rattlesnake will den in. Like that was another cool thing with telemetry is like you think it like most of the time. I would say generally denning habitat looks pretty similar, where you see like talus slopes, big rocks, etc. But you see them sometimes they'll go into like their entrance will be like a chipmunk burrow, and you don't really know what it looks like underground. But I think one thing that is probably pretty certain is that it's as tight as it can be. It seems like, just from what I can see on the surface. And because you would think that if it was really open, it would collapse somewhere and you would be able to see something like that. I think that most of the time it's going to be tight because the entrances are almost always very tight.
Have you ever made your own artificially on your like camp area just for fun?
No, I mean, so I worked on a project in New Jersey where we were, where they were moving a concrete pad for like a cell tower, I think it was, and they dug up a bunch of snakes in the middle of the winter. And New Jersey is very like most of their herps are listed in New Jersey just because they don't have a lot of, especially like the stuff that's like montane, because there's just not a lot of the habitat they have there. And so this was the same boss I had for the other one in PA. It put transmitters in several snakes that were still alive, like and there was rattlers, rat snakes, racers, copperheads, hognoses, and basically what they were trying to see was, can we build artificial dens for these things? And and I was there at the tail end of it when we were taking the transmitters out, and several of the racers and rat snakes used the artificial hybernacula. So basically, it was like a Tupperware container, or a tote or plastic tote or whatever, buried in the ground. I think that's what it was, but they've done this too with pine snakes, where they bury a bunch of like wood and rubble,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have like a PVC, like a plastic,
the corrugated.
yeah, a plastic like curvy pipe that comes out of it as an entrance. And so we had that pipe coming up. We had that in another tote as basically a trap for when they came out, and we go and check it every day. And there's racers and rat snakes that used it. The copperheads didn't use it. And then some of the rattlesnakes they actually hibernated. It was an old pipeline where they had like rubble all around it. So there was space around the pipe, and the pipe gets hot for certain types of like natural gas. And they would just basically like sit on the pipe underground.
Like a riprap pile?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like underground. Like now, for most of like, well, probably the last 30 years, whenever they bury a pipeline, they pad it with like sand. They don't just like dump rocks on it, because it'll like dent it and mess it up. But yeah. So it can be done. Definitely. They've done work in New Jersey with pine snakes and an artificial hybernacula like that.
Yeah. I mean, I've just like, I don't know, for fucking 20, 30 years been like, I'm going to buy a property and install hibernacula, because that's like the best way to get like consistent sort of snakes in your yard.
Oh yeah.
All year round. Like, and it could be people, I mean, snakes that just stumble in. They couldn't make it to theirs. They stumble into yours. So like, that's the best way to get snakes out of your yard if you like don't want it, is like take this relatively rare resource and get rid of it. But
yeah,
like when I lived in the Pacific Northwest, it was raining all winter. So like dry hibernacula was what was rare.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know, because it's like 50 degrees all winter, but constant rain. So like the water table is basically like this far below the surface. So the only thing that can live there is garter snakes and rubber boas, and they can only live in like certain hill slopes that drain well enough that they don't drown.
Yeah.
So I couldn't put a hibernacula on my yard. It's no good.
Well, I mean, get a bunch of burrowing crayfish and just let them go.
Are they native there?
I think they're all over the U.S.
Pacific Northwest? That place is weird. Like west of the Cascades, there's like hardly any snakes. Just salamanders are in charge. Some frogs, but not even that many.
I don't know. I don't know. You'd have to ask someone like David. They'd probably know. But it's amazing how many snakes use crayfish burrows for hibernacula in the East. Like I mean, garter snakes use them. Like I think any snake that is in an area with crayfish, burrowing crayfish, probably has the opportunity to use them as hibernacula. And then stuff like Massasaugas and Kirtland snakes, they almost require them in some areas.
Yeah, like in my mom's old property, it was karst, so fucking the whole thing was Swiss cheese anyway. But like, like off of the Opequon, it was like a tributary, and so the water snakes and garter snakes would use crayfish burrows / karst like funnels to brumate in, because that was just close enough to their habitat. Yeah, you wouldn't see rat snakes or bigger stuff in there, because I think when it gets flooded in the spring, they'll come out early, be like half zombie, but warm up. But they can go back. But a rat snake couldn't hang with that because it would just get eaten too quick. It's too big.
Yeah.
But they would go upland somewhere else. So it's actually like really interesting how they pick.
Yeah, that is interesting. I've seen, we had when I was doing telemetry on that project, we had a rat snake that was hibernating like 70 feet up in like a big red oak tree, like inside of it.
Did you read that paper that came out? Like multiple snakes using the same waterlogged tree hole. Rat snakes.
No, but it doesn't surprise me.
They fucking love holes.
Oh
Love
yeah,
them.
I talked to a guy at a conference that was up in Massachusetts, I think, and he was like asking me about talking to me about rat snakes. I mean, he's looking for rat snakes up there, like I look for green salamanders down here because they're rare up there, like on the edge of their range. And he said, he's like, there's this big tree I know where I find several like it's like a communal shedding site for rat snakes.
And they'll communally lay eggs too.
Yeah, they lay eggs
in certain parts of their range. It's actually like crazy. Like that's their resource.
Yeah.
That's like maybe limiting because they know they need to use it. But it's like it's actually really wild, like how, and this is like maybe for people who are keeping captive snakes, the kinds of niches snakes would prefer to use. They could probably be fine without very much, but they like all kinds of weird stuff that we don't actually use in captivity at all. What do you think about weird people who keep snakes as pets?
Well, I'm really liking this one comment about the warm, damp holes. It's very intriguing. It's very true.
Right.
I personally don't keep anything. The only time I do keep stuff is whenever I do like I'll do like kids programs at this one rod and gun club that I belong to, and I usually just try to get like a milk snake and a copperhead and a water snake, so I can be like, look at this. Right,
these aren't copperheads.
And it's usually like it's for the kids, but it's more so for the parents because the parents are with them and they're like, that's a copperhead. I'm like, are you sure about that? And then you look at your face when you show them a copperhead and realize that they've never seen a copperhead before.
Right.
And it's like, I'll keep like, I enjoy keeping stuff like that. Like I'll usually try to get a spotted salamander because they're awesome for kids. They're big, they're fat, they're lazy, and looks like they're always smiling. So, and I enjoy having them, like, because obviously I can't go just catch a spotted salamander in the middle of June, so I got to keep it for like a couple months. And I was like feeding it worms and things like that. They're really fun to watch feed, and they're generally pretty easy to keep. I don't keep like, I like to see stuff in the wild, so it doesn't really excite me that much to keep something for a long period of time. Like, I think that I would get bored pretty easily. Whenever I was a little kid, I wanted to keep everything I caught, everything I saw. I'd be like, I'm going to keep this toad for 20 years. But my parents would always make me let it go. And I always liked the idea. I always liked watching it like swim away or whatever, or crawl away. And I would feel bad if they died. And that's just like, I mean, that's just how I am. I'm also like pretty lazy. Jessica and I were roommates, and I was supposed to be the one who vacuumed our house, and I think I vacuumed it like one time.
That's fine. It's fine.
But so yeah, I don't. But I also have that. I also currently have the time, and because of my job, I'm in an area. I'm a lot of times in areas where I have the time and the opportunity to go and look for stuff in the wild. And I realize, and I'm also like, I mean, the reason that I'm in somewhat decent physical shape is because I'm obsessed with species that live in the mountains. So I'm always running around in those areas. So if I didn't have the time to do things, to do field herping, then I would probably be more inclined to keep stuff. So I understand that a lot of people out there don't have time to go, drive 3 hours just to crawl around a rhododendron for 4 hours and get cut up from greenbrier. Yeah.
There's no stories. I was perfect every time.
We See, I like going out with Pookie because I like, yeah, it was really fun making her try to jump across a creek that was like this big, and then you just pretend like we were gonna leave her.
Pookie's my chihuahua, everybody, if you missed it. She died. I don't know if it's like a secret.
Oh, really?
Or not. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. How long ago?
April?
Oh, really? Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know. I didn't know if I should announce it. No, she is badass. But yeah, like there's like a really big weird divide between like field herping people and captive keeping people, and it's a lot of times it's like y'all both like the same fucking thing. Like you could at least like shake hands cordially over whatever. It's the weirdest thing. And I still don't get it because like I remember writing impact statements be like pet trade, fucked up wood turtles. I'm like, kind of, but not really. I probably just didn't get hit by cars. Just any car squishing them is what's going to ruin wood turtles. Yes, there will probably be some people poaching them, but the pet side is like, I want it captive bred so it doesn't have worms and shit. Like that's, they really do want that. They don't want to have poached animals.
Yeah, I would like, if it's bred in captivity, you know, go for it. Like the worst thing that could happen is a rare animal take it out of the wild and sold for a bunch of money. I think that's like just deplorable. I can't imagine anyone who would do something like that actually cares about the animal.
Right. And most people are like, we need to get captive breeding going so no one needs to, and then breed a lot of them so they're not expensive, so no one would need to like poach them because they're expensive.
So
like the more you breed them, like they're cheaper, and then you'll leave the ones in a while alone.
People like a lot of state you know, like agency folks are like very iffy when it comes to releasing, like when it comes to releasing mammals and birds, it's like a free-for-all because it works so well. They're just like, oh, we want elk in this area where they haven't been in 100 years. Well, we'll just trade some turkey with this state over here, and we'll bring them in on a truck and dump them over wherever, and they'll be fine. But you just can't do that with herbs because they're so habitat specific. They can't move a lot. And then there's the whole, and that's not even bringing up the whole conundrum of disease, which is like, I think it's probably one of the biggest things is keeping them from, you know, I think like the whole bubble of SFD is finally starting to like go down because.
You mean like the hype or the actual threat? Because sometimes I'm like,
I don't think there's
how much SFD was always here all along anyway.
It was. Yeah. Have you seen the study where they found it in specimens from like the 50s, the 30s?
No, but I'm not surprised because it's like
they should have done that a long time ago. Why are they doing that now? Like everyone, like all the old herper guys, all the old like rattlesnake guys be like, yeah, those are, we used to just call those den scars. Like we always saw that.
They all come out of hibernaculum. Not all of them, but like a lot of them look like shit, like hot garbage. Like they were a little too moist or whatever. Any fungus, even something that would be on their skin naturally, just like let's go. Immune system's down. It's a little moist. I'm just gonna chew on this thing's face. Yeah,
and that's the problem. Is like people, and part of part of me thinks that like some of the hype was warranted because they were like everyone saw white nose syndrome with bats, and they were like, if this this could happen with herps, and we could be like screwed. But it's not something that was. I think we're pretty certain that it was always here now. And the thing is, like,
why they come out at like very weird times, and like
they'll come out. They'll come out.
It's fucking 30 degrees outside. They'll come out in sun.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think they're just drying off and getting a drink of water, like on purpose, even though it's extremely risky. So they could get stuck.
People, you'd be really surprised. Like a lot of people are really surprised when I say, like, they will come out. There might be a rattlesnake out right now in Pennsylvania. Like, for some reason, like they don't go crawling around wherever. They'll come. They don't go more than like 2 feet from their entrance hole, but they'll come out in weird times, like, especially if they have something wrong with it, like if they're trying to shed something off. But that's the thing, is like it created this kind of vicious cycle where people were like, okay, this one has a fungus, we got to keep going and checking on it. But sometimes by going and checking on them, you disturb them and then they go under, when that's the last thing you want to do. They need to be out thermoregulating so they can shed it off to get rid of it. But if you go and disturb them, then they're going to die, and then you'll be like, well,
right, they needed maybe
the fungus killed them.
Immune system turn on by sitting in the sun long enough to warm up enough. Like I never saw rattlesnakes coming out of Hibernacula because I wasn't really up on the mountain at that time. But like you can find like half frozen garter snakes all over the place, like or whatever, that are just like they got flooded out, or they're just like, fuck, I'm just gonna warm up, and maybe they got stuck, maybe they didn't. They just figure it out. Like they're surprisingly resilient. And if they know they have a problem, they'll warm up and shut it off. Somehow they know to do that.
Oh, yeah. It really is unbelievable how something that is cold-blooded could be out like that, and in that kind of weather, and something that can look so shitty, and you're like, there's no way that snake's going to live. And, it might not live because it gets picked off by something, but it might shed, and then all of a sudden it's like,
it's looking good.
Let's go. Let's get some chippies.
Andrew's dropping some jokes in the chat.
Oh yeah, the cordyceps. Yeah.
Let's just be glad it's not here. That's all. Gross.
Yeah. To go back to what I was saying before about keepers and field herpers, like there's a lot of there's obviously going to be like bad apples that make the hobby look bad in either one. Like there's field herpers that go out and destroy a lot of stuff, and want to go out and chase stuff just for clout and purposely get bit by things. And I'm sure you all seen videos of people doing that, just like you see videos of like these numbskulls like free handling cobras or whatever, and like it's not gonna do good. It doesn't do good for anyone. People who truly care about the animals, you care about them, and they're going to do good for them.
What do you think about, like, a lot of times, like, keepers, like, they've tried to raise money for like conservation organizations, and they've been like, they're like, we don't want your money. Like keeper, like it's that antagonistic at the institutional level. They're like, oh, $3,000 for this like nature conservancy park or whatever. They're like, nope. It's because like keepers, we're all bad, like collectively, even though we're all interested in the same thing. It's just two different like modalities. Like it's actually like that bad, which has always been crazy to me, because I'm like, both of them are good. Like you could introduce a kid to like a little leopard gecko, and then they grow up to like wild, whatever, lizards in and near their house, and they still like their leopard gecko, but they also like their native species too.
I was a little kid and went to see a rattlesnake roundup in Cinemahoning, PA, where like that was when they were still bagging them and doing crazy stuff, and I was like, I mean, that was like one of the defining moments for me to see something like that. And obviously it's all changed now. It's all just a contest for like, see what the biggest one is, and you have to put them back. And it's very educational now. But yeah, the same thing with like, I mean, I love going to a pet store to see like a Mediterranean or what are those, African clawed frogs? Which actually just, do you know that they use those for like pregnancy tests.
Well, they used to.
Yeah.
They would inject them with
Yeah,
urine.
I had no idea. I
People
just found out that recently.
In the 50s, we were very like into
Who figured that out?
They used to inject rabbits, I think, first, and they're like, they're kind of cute. We'll just do the frogs. If they lay eggs,
Yeah,
she's pregnant.
Yeah, but that's dumb. Like, if you, especially like, nonprofits and stuff like that are hurting for money, like, I'd take money anywhere I could get it.
Right.
Like,
it's just like, that's what I'm saying is crazy. It's like, so I want like keepers to like the Orion Society and like the Nature Conservancy and like the Center for Biological Diversity. But the Center for Biological Diversity in particular is like very antagonistic to keeping because they're worried about invasives. And we're like,
they're worried about a lot of things.
So
I worry a lot.
So I don't know how to like bridge the gap more, except for like make keepers go outside and see if you can convince some herpers to like keep whatever their like favorite species is as a pet, and then they could like see the issues on both sides. But it's largely unsuccessful.
It's all about networking. Talking to people, like getting all these people together, like West Virginia Herp Society. They've been having meetings for the last couple of years. I think since 2017 or something like that.
They started back up. I guess I knew that they had a meeting.
They've had meetings. I actually, something was always going on whenever it was happening. I was finally able to go this past year, and it was great. There was a lot of people there that were obviously keepers.
Mm-hmm.
Got to go out and see like green salamanders, and then there was people like one of Jamie's students did a talk. Zach Lokman did a talk. Dr. Polly's usually there. It's I think that's a good thing, and I think it's really sad that like an agency or a nonprofit like that would be antagonistic towards something like that, because these are very like the people who spend their life taking care of an animal are going to know a hell of a lot more about it than somebody who's like, all right, we're going to start a breeding program for spotted turtles or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just like, oh yeah, we're trying to figure out how we can get them to like lay eggs. Meanwhile, there's some guy that lives down the road that's been doing it for 40 years in his house.
Right.
Like, hire that guy. Get like, they need to utilize people like this. It's stupid.
Yeah, I think we agree. It's always been crazy to me. Like, there's a way that we can live equitably, and for like a class of species that fuck all nobody cares about, the only other half of the set of people that care about it too, they got money, they are interested.
Yeah,
they'll volunteer. Why would you send them away? It's crazy. Fuck.
Yeah. The people who don't care are going to be in their own world. Like the people, like the people who are just all about like all about like free handling and just like macho type shit. Like, just let them do whatever they like. They're in their own world. Just whatever. Screw them. We all of us people who care about the animals need to stick together.
Right.
That's the way I see it.
And I do think keepers need to go outside too. Like, it's a problem. Like, they're more interested in snakes sometimes in other countries than in their own country. Like, we have lots of cool snakes and lizards and turtles and shit here too. So you don't have to travel necessarily to like experience something, transcendent, like life-changingly beautiful. And I don't know, like that. Those are my favorite moments. I keep lots of snakes. I like them. Nothing ever beats like those like weird moments in the wild where you're like, there's like a fortuitous set of events, like a sunset and a waterfall and a fucking rock and a snake. And you're like, I don't know what's happening, but it feels extra.
One of my favorites. Yeah. Obviously, I love rattlesnakes, but ringnecks are still one of my favorite snakes. They're just, I don't know, they're just cool looking. And like, that's also another one of like when I do that that little program for kids, obviously, like I remember one time I had a milk snake, and I was like, it was a juvenile, and I was like, all right, this thing's nice. I'm gonna let the kids hold it. The first group of kids in the morning, some 5-year-old girl picks it up and it bites her, and she tosses it somewhere. I'm like, all right, no one's holding that again. And then like I'm like, all right, I'm gonna hold this water snake for these kids, and all of a sudden I'm like trying to hide that my arms are just covered in blood. Like, why are you bleeding? No, don't worry about it. It was just a scab. But like, so like ringnecks are like the bread and butter of that program. I have all the kids they're just constantly passing around ringneck snakes, and they all are like blown away by it. Like, I don't need to bring they don't need to be shown like some crazy morph of a python to be excited. They're excited about a ringneck snake. So that's what I'm going to show them. And the thing too is, like, when you ask them, like, I'll always ask kids, like, what kind of snake do you think this is? And they always say a snake that they've seen on TV that doesn't even live in this hemisphere. So that's why I always try to show them native species. That I want to show them something that they might see again someday. And it makes it less scary, because like most TV shows and things like that, it's all about like you know, the biggest, most deadly or whatever. And that's just not the case with a lot of snakes. And I think it does better to promote like an understanding of wildlife, of native wildlife, to show that, to educate people on that. Because where else are they going to learn it?
PA is better. Like a lot of states, you can't keep any natives.
Yeah.
And I'm like, at least PA you can keep 4, right? You keep 4 or catch 4, keep 4, or whatever the rules are. But like a lot of states, you can't keep any. And then it's like, to me, like keeping is at least part of the package deal. It doesn't have to be for like the species of concern or whatever, but as long as you can have like some educational programs, a teacher has one in their classroom, whatever, there should be a chance that it's a native species too.
Yeah.
But definitely. There's lots of states where it's totally illegal, and you're just like, fuck. How is anybody going to appreciate anything if you can't be like, oh, look, I live in, like in West Virginia, they banned all natives.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you could get a scientific, you're an educational permit.
I know, but
nobody
it's like asking a lot. Like, but if someone could keep a pet, pine snake or something, I think it's a species of concern. Bad example. A pet king snake.
Yeah.
Like an Eastern king. That's a good pet. It's fine. Like it's not like crazy. It's not going to kill the neighbors. It's fine.
Yeah.
But that would maybe want them to go herp and go and appreciate anything in their environment. I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. I feel like most state agencies don't give a shit.
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, the way things are, it's like a lot of times their hands are tied by budgets. They got, people breathing down their neck, and it's the kind of people that, the way that colleges have been in the last like 20 years or so, they're churning out people. I've noticed with a lot of agencies, people that don't have a lot of, they kind of just do what they're told. They don't have a lot of, because like if you have some kid come up and you're like, hey, I want to like do a study on garter snakes in my backyard, most people are going to be like, no, that can't happen. But like, that's what we need. We need people to get involved. We need people to think outside the box, and need people to just care more. And
yeah, like nobody's going to advocate for like their local swamp more than the kid who played in said swamp. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There was like in Ohio, they found Kirtland snakes recently in an area that it was like a new county or something like that. I remember reading about this, and they put out boards for it, and they couldn't find any. Well, some kid who was out there fishing found one, and he was like, "Hey, I found this snake." And they're like, "What the hell? We couldn't find him."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was just. I mean, he probably went fishing there like every day, and he's flipping these boards or whatever. He didn't even know what the hell they were for.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden he finds one. And I thought it was the coolest thing. Like, they went back there, and they went there with the kid, and they actually got the kid involved so that he could go out and check them, because he probably lived right there.
Mm-hmm.
And they got the kid involved. I mean, that's like exactly what you want to see, you know?
Right. There's a lot of like, I don't know. I mean, we can like lament the state of the country's government, but there's a lot of like top down, like only scientists can do this.
That's what I mean.
Only fucking whatever can publish in this paper. You know, any sort of natural history of a guy who's been chilling out in his creek looking at turtles for the last 40 years. Fuck you, this paper. It's not a real paper. It is a real paper. Like, it's, I don't know. Like,
I've explained it a lot better than I could.
I've heard that like natural history from Dr. Loafman has gotten like a better shake in publishing recently, like since we graduated. So it's not as like brutally like, oh, if you don't do a landscape based model of this fucking species occurrence, that you never fucking check, by the way, if it's actually efficacious. You just make a model.
Yeah. Models and genetics and
fuck you, models. I
remember everyone laughed at me when when we were in grad school, and we were talking about something. I was like, usually when I see the word ANOVA, I just skip that section. Like any kind of stats, I was like, I just skip that section.
That's but like,
yeah, you're right on the money there about like the top down thing, and people like back in the day, you know, guys like Marty Martin, he was like this, you know, just basically devoted his life to rattlesnakes and in the Appalachians. And he has all these he published all these cool papers, and he wasn't like a PhD professor or anything. He just really liked rattlesnakes. And he does these really cool long-term studies in West Virginia, and I think it'd be hard to do that these days. You know,
right.
It comes people.
It's not like people are going to pay anybody to do it anyway. So if somebody wants to do it for free,
exactly, yeah,
fucking let them do it, and like accept them as you know, like a lot of these papers, they're like notes anyway. Like, I saw a snake eating a different snake in a tree, you know, so like that's basically what it can be. But like, I don't know, we really fucked up the scientific method, just saying, for natural history.
Yeah,
hopefully it gets better. I don't know.
Well, I do have to say that Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Virginia, they have pretty good people that are open to these kinds of things. So I feel lucky that I'm involved in states like that, where they have people that understand these kinds of things. There's other states.
West Virginia make natives legal to keep again. Like, that was a dumb decision.
I think I really don't know what happened there. I think from what the way that I see it is, they made that so because they had regulations that didn't have like any teeth before that, and they don't want people, and they probably got blowback from, you know, WCOs and wardens and stuff, be like, well, how do I know what kind of species salamander this is? And they'd be like, well, if you can't keep any of them and you want to get someone and you want to find someone, you could just be like, well, I don't know what kind of salamander that is, but you're not allowed to have it. But I don't think that you're going to have a warden out there walking up to a kid with a garter snake and being like, well, you can't have that.
I think when you do stuff like this, it like incentivizes that behavior. Like in Florida, Like they can't tell the fuck all shit difference of nothing. There's too many species to tell the difference. They
Yeah.
might as well have made them all like mall legal and then like just had bag limits for natives, so you didn't like
Yeah.
take 40 or whatever. But
Yeah.
instead they make weird rules. And in West Virginia, like non-natives are legal. So like, what if they had a tiger salamander from California? They would still need to know the difference between a tiger salamander from California and a spotted salamander that's native, technically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just still just as hard. It just like
That's a good point.
hurts people's ability to like go to Petco, get a corn snake, and be like, "Fuck, I like corn snakes. Oh, they're native, but they're kind of rare. Maybe I'll herp them and just enjoy them. Don't collect them. Like, who cares? It's a brown snake in the woods." But that like chain of learning about your own, herpetofauna is it's fucking broken.
Yeah, it doesn't even. You know about the guy that's been finding corn snakes?
Yeah, fuck that guy. I'll fight him. I'm kidding. He just beat me to it.
Yeah, I know. No, he's good. He gave a really good, cool talk about all this.
I know he's probably a great guy.
Yeah.
Still want to fight him.
Hey,
no, sorry. Keep going.
There's still pine snakes and eastern kings to be found down there.
All right. Well, that's like, but that was like my home, like the next county I knew for my home. What a bitch! I ain't coming back ever.
Oh, come on.
No, if I move back, I'd move back to Pennsylvania because I think it has the most fair, like keeping laws and stuff. So I wouldn't even move back to WV. Fuck.
Come on down.
All right, shit. Pennsylvania's waiting for me. I do miss like, pawpaw trees. Like spice bushes. Like anything eastern deciduous. I miss it.
Tumbleweeds.
There's tumbleweeds here. It's wild. They're not even native either. That's the worst part. They're from fucking Siberia or some shit. And they're invasive.
I like it. I really do like the area where I live, and I like the. I mean, I like the Appalachians and the Midwest, and I like the Southeast too. Whenever I have the opportunity to go down there, but once it gets too hot and things aren't moving, it could be somewhat discouraging. Mm-hmm. I think that's the nice thing about the Appalachians is you can do stuff you can look for certain. There's always something to look for,
mm-hmm. even in the winter. Oh fuck, Jinx! You want me a Coke?
Mud puppies, yeah.
I used to like, wood frogs come out really early, but even before then, you can go pull whatever, like overwintering bullfrogs, green frogs. Just like the littlest puddle of water. I'm not quarreling with anybody. He just beat me at my own game, and I'm jealous. Okay.
Yeah,
snakes are rare.
Yeah, I did. Mud puppy trapping. I have a video about the mud
on your
puppies.
YouTube.
Yeah,
let's look at your YouTube. We're about finishing up.
It's pretty sad, but
winter mud puppying. Oh, you should keep going though. Like, there's a lot of like content. You've seen NFK thing, right?
Oh yeah, I know that. Yeah.
I know him.
Well, I talk to him online here and there.
Are y'all buds?
Yeah, we have a lot of mutual friends.
I should invite him on. Fuck. But I like the idea of like a creator of content who all they do is they're like, here's some wild shit and it's fun. Let's like, edit it up. Obviously you're deleting a lot of the like. I walked around in the woods for 8 hours and didn't find anything. Like, it makes it more appealing to normies. But
the videos I'm going to make are going to show that. So
fuck all 8 hours.
No, there aren't a lot like I like Noah's videos and some other people out there, but there's a lot of videos where I see a lot of most of the popular content I see are seems like Noah's kind of the exception, where it's like most of the other content is like shock. It's like,
oh yeah, they're the worst.
It's like shock, or it's like so G-rated and
For kids
and boring that it like, I mean, that's good that it's for kids and it appeals to them, but I can't do that.
You don't
I
have
like,
to.
yeah, like the way my brain works is just like, I don't know. I have a lot.
I'm
I
not
want to,
G-rated.
yeah, I want to make something like, I just have like a kind of like a darker sense of humor and things like that. And I like to, I want to make something that I would want to watch because it doesn't exist.
Andrew Heckler says he would watch more naturalist content as long as it's not van life people who stumble on wildlife and then optimize it for Instagram. Yeah, I think NKH, what's his name, Noah? He's like the best one. He's like, I got a Target, I'm driving, it sucks. Here's my, gas station burrito. And then he herps, he finds some stuff, you got an ID, you got like in situ pictures and in situ video. And you're like, oh, that's the context for the finding. He's like, this was my goal, and then I missed my goal and it kind of sucked. Then I go home and I drive for 8 more hours. So like it's actually like is relatively realistic while still being like edited in a fun way.
Yeah.
I respect it.
Yeah, I only have a couple videos on that channel, but I have almost 2 years worth of stuff recorded. I was just telling Jessica that I just need to edit down and get out there now that I have some more time. Finally,
we talked about the other guy. What's his name that we went to school with? Not Messenger. My brain's not working.
Zach?
Not Zach. The other guy. You're a year older than us.
Nathan Shepard?
Shepard. Is he still on Instagram?
I don't know, honestly. I could check.
Yeah, he was relatively famous. Herper guy, Instagram. What I'm saying is I think there's like a still a marketplace for that kind of content.
Yeah.
Because
because I don't see it. I'm always like, I want to watch something like this, and it just doesn't exist.
Right. It probably, like, it costs a lot of money and it costs a lot of time. But if you're already doing it anyway, and you can slap a GoPro on your chest for the most part, and then maybe film an intro, outro.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing is like, I would just make dumb little Instagram stories, and mostly for my own amusement. And people said that they really liked it. So I was like, well, I can expand on this. So that's what I did.
Yeah. Like Instagram is fine, but I think where it'll do best is on YouTube. Because I've always been like, what the fuck is going on if I wanted to herp whatever, Georgia or whatever.
Because
you don't know when you're going to want to go there. Like if I go there for like a reptile show, you might want to herp around it. So I'm always like checking to see if someone showed off what they road cruised up while they were there.
Yeah.
So I would do it. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a fine line between educating people and educating the wrong people about where and how to find stuff. That's one thing that I've been like trying to go over in my head is like, not only do you not want to tell someone exactly where to find something so they can go take it and sell it to somewhere in Asia or whatever, but like, you don't want to give people, you don't want to show people something that will get them in trouble with like with a state agency or something, because what's legal in one state, like that's what there's this one guy in Florida I was watching, and it's like he's just like grabbing every snake and essentially like harassing everything, and like Florida and Texas are like the only states where you can get away with things like that. Like somebody who's watching that who lives in Maryland or like Massachusetts or New Jersey, they're going to do that, and they're going to get a big
Popo's
fine.
coming.
Yeah, and then they're going to be pissed, and they're just going to never care about whatever it is again.
Right. Well, I think that's why we need more, because you need to show like whatever the state statutes are, because some places you can only photograph them, some places you can touch them. It just depends.
Yeah, I tried it. That's what I try to do. Like, luckily with the mud puppy thing, I was doing some distribution stuff with them for the herp atlas, and the same thing with the wood turtles. There's like a monitoring program I'm helping where I do some surveys on a stream for that. So like, I mean, I was doing it anyway, so I was like, I'll film it. But like, I try to explain that in the video, so people don't get the wrong idea.
That's good. Well, I expect a new video in 30 days. How about that?
Yeah, that will definitely happen.
I will review it on the show.
All right.
Better be good. No, man, it's been fun. It's been 2.5 hours. I can't believe we probably talk forever. But come back whenever. Like maybe like whatever. Whenever you do another video or report of your spring herping activities, what kind of fun shenanigans happened. I didn't even get to ask you about human feces. I was planning on it. So we'll save that one for next time.
Well, actually, if you watch the mud puppy video.
Oh, there's some human feces in that one?
Well, I talk about something. Yeah. I
have never seen as much feces as I did around Huntington. Like you go to like we used to get like soft shell turtles or try to find soft shell turtles in certain spots. And there would just be lots of human feces just all around. Like while people were fishing, they just lost control of their bowels. I'm assuming because of meth. And I was like, maybe we could talk about all the places we found feces, but we'll save that one for next time.
It sounds good.
Fuck, chat. Thanks, chat, for being here.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Check out his IG and his YouTube video that he's going to start working on right away is in the show notes. So go subscribe. Go follow on IG. Aaron's a cool guy. He likes snakes and salamanders and stuff. That's all that really matters. All right, let's wave like princesses. Ready? Good job. Bye, everybody.
Bye.